Hey everybody, welcome to the Jeff Rubin Show. I am Jeff Rubin, and today, joining me on the show and joining the very exclusive Jeff Rubin Three-Timer Club, please welcome Theme Park Reviews, Robb Alvey.
How's it going, Jeff?
Robb, welcome back to the show. You have appearances on this podcast going all the way back to episode 17 when you were on the show along with a roller coaster designer.
Yep.
And then you were on somewhere in the low 100s with a water park, water park owner / water slide designer. We talked about water parks. And I think while we were discussing water parks, you mentioned going to a water park in some other country, and the idea, and we started talking about it, and I just very quickly realized that it was this whole new can of worms, and we wanted to really focus on water parks that day. But today, we are opening that can of worms. We are going to talk exclusively about international theme parks. But first, maybe for those that haven't heard your previous appearances, first of all, you should go back and listen. I mean, it's not like they're like out of date or anything. It's still roller coasters. But for those that haven't heard, and maybe for those that have, can you remind us a little theme park review and what is your mission with that?
You know, our mission just really started out as we love theme parks. So we went around the world visiting parks, and we would document our travel. So we always tell people that we kind of started doing this before blogging was kind of a thing that cool kids would do.
So what year is this?
Oh God! I mean, we're talking when did the internet start? I mean, the mid '90s, '96, I think, is when we officially went online. So we're 20 years old this year. I hadn't even thought about that.
Wow,
yeah,
cool. So that's pretty old school.
Yeah, no, we started out as a crappy little GeoCities site, just posting. Well, it's funny what now would have been like thumbnail pictures, you know, like pictures that you see as a thumbnail. That was what the site was, you know, roller coasters and theme parks. And I think it started out with like a trip to Disneyland Paris or something, and it just kind of grew from there.
And how many, just to give people an idea, the scope of this project, how many theme parks would you say you visit a year?
Oh God, I mean, I want to say the number has got to be close to 100. I guess it sort of depends on how you define theme parks, because we'll go and visit everything from like, you know, a giant big resort like, you know, Tokyo Disneyland or Disneyland in California, down to like little tiny mom and pop type of places. But if you're talking just, you know, individual parks, we probably spend about 100 days a year traveling to theme parks, and there's usually about a different one every day that we're out traveling.
So that's like every 1 in 3, somewhere between every 1 in 3 and every 1 in 4 days you are at a theme park.
I mean, to give you an example, you know, we live here in Orlando now. And we live about 1.5 miles from the Universal Resort and about 4 miles from the Disney Resort. And we're probably, you know, SeaWorld's kind of right in the middle. And we're at least at one of those 3 parks at least 2 to 3 times a week. I mean, I was down at Fun Spot this morning, so, you know, doing some theme park stuff. So, I mean, I was literally at a theme park 4 hours ago.
You know, I have to ask, even though I said we were only going to talk about international theme parks, from your perspective as a theme park enthusiast, how has SeaWorld been recently? I always forget about SeaWorld when we talk about theme parks, but it seems like they've fallen on rough times, possibly because of, you know, the Blackfish documentary and all that. From your perspective, what have you seen?
I feel really bad for them, because the thing about the whole Blackfish documentary, while there might have been some truth to that from, you know, we're talking decades ago, most of the stuff that is in that documentary is kind of animal rights activist propaganda, you know, where, you know, SeaWorld hasn't captured a whale in, you know, decades. I mean, we're talking going back to the 70s. So I think there's a little bit of, you know, some unfair hate that's been going on with the parks. But to be honest, you know, this summer, the parks seemed fine. I mean, you would go in and the Shamu show would be filled to capacity every single day. You know, and here in Orlando, I mean, there's Disney, there's Universal, and SeaWorld, and that's kind of the top 3. SeaWorld's kind of always been the number 3, but still, they've got to be one of the top 20 theme parks in the country. I'm sure if we looked up the data, you know, I don't have it sitting in front of me, but they still do good business. And It's unfortunate some of the hard times that they've come on because of the film. But, they're building a giant new roller coaster this year that's opening up, and hopefully that'll help them out a bit.
Do they have roller coasters at SeaWorld? Isn't that like, aren't I supposed to be like learning about penguins while I'm there or something?
No, I give them credit, man. The one thing that SeaWorld does really well is they really are kind of like that whole, like package experience, right? They opened a roller coaster called Manta, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And it's a flying roller coaster. If you've been up to Magic Mountain, ridden Tatsu or any of those.
I have. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it's awesome. I mean, first of all, it's built around this just lush, beautiful area. As you walk through the queue, there's all of these just beautiful aquariums filled with manta rays and everything. And then you sort of get on the ride and you sort of quote unquote experience what it's like being a manta as you sort of gracefully glide through the track and everything. And it's an awesome ride.
So it's like the car is sort of suspended. It's like hanging from the track.
Exactly, and you're kind of in this flying position. And if you look at the cars, do a Google search for Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. They're beautiful. They're these gigantic blue manta ray looking things, and so they do an absolutely fantastic job of sort of mixing this sort of marine animal theme in with their roller coasters and attractions. So I mean, yeah, they've got, as of this year, they'll have like 3 sort of big world-class roller coasters. They've got a really nice water coaster, and then of course they have all the shows and all the other exhibits. So they kind of model the park, especially the one here in Orlando, that there's something to do for everybody. And keeping in mind that, not only are they competing with Disney for the more family-friendly type of atmosphere, but they're also competing with parks like Universal that have big roller coasters. So they kind of have to stay current and up to date. So they have a good mix. Honestly, it's a lovely park. We love going down there. I mean, the shows are fun and the roller coasters are good. So
I love the idea of having like a zoo-like experience and be able to watch some animals while I'm waiting on a line, because otherwise you're doing nothing. Throw some animals on there, but take care of them. There are some properly cared for animals on there.
It's a lot of fun. I really think that these people that watch the movie, it's like they watch a 90-minute documentary and they think that they're sort of experts on what it's like with animals in captivity and this whole thing in zoos, and they don't have a clue. I mean, we see SeaWorld, they rescue more animals than anyone that we know of. In fact, we were just at a Jack Hanna show at SeaWorld this last weekend, and he was talking about the blackfish people and they don't understand, and he had a quote that is completely correct. He said, like, SeaWorld does more for animals in one day than your average animal activist hate group person will do in an entire year, and it's true. I wish more people could understand that. Anyway,
interesting.
That's a whole other conversation.
Totally. We'll save that for the next one.
Exactly.
That's the can of worms we'll put aside for the 4th appearance. But
Robb Alvey versus the blackfish weirdos or whatever,
But today, international theme parks. Give me an idea. What other countries have you visited and gone to theme parks in?
We have been, I mean, so the obvious ones, Japan, China, Australia, all over Europe. We've done a lot of stuff in Asia, like, Taiwan, all over China, Hong Kong. Pretty much, I want to say, I guess the only 2 major continents that we haven't really done much in is South Africa and South America. But other than those 2, we've been pretty much in almost every country that you can think of. I mean, we've seen some very interesting, roller coasters and parks, some sketchy ones, some beautiful parks that you look at and think, man, like if only this could be here in the United States. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in the theme park world that's out there that a lot of people don't even realize that exists. Like what?
What do we not know is out there?
Okay, so the one ride that we did, and this ride has got to be at least 12 years old now, and I want to say that we at least put it on the map as far as getting it around social media, but it was the tilt coaster that you see in Taiwan. You must have seen the video went viral for us, and you must have seen it at some point. It's the ride where the train goes up like a traditional lift hill, and then comes out onto this vertical platform. And then it locks into place, and then the entire platform tilts into a 90-degree angle. And the whole time, I mean, all you realize is that there is, I mean, obviously the train is locked into place, but there's nothing in front of you, nothing behind you. And all you think about in your brain is like, okay, if any one of these fail-safes break, we're just going right over the edge into whatever becomes a pile of train and human flesh and not a good sign to have happen on a roller coaster. But then, of course, it does actually connect with the other track, and then it does just an incredible vertical 90-degree drop, like down into a tunnel, and it's an absolutely crazy ride. Probably one of the scariest rides I've ever done, mainly just from like a psychological point of view.
That's cool. I did a ride in Las Vegas here domestically.
Yes.
On top of the big tall. What you probably know what I'm talking about. What hotel is that?
On the Stratosphere.
On the Stratosphere, right. They got 3 rides on the roof, all sort of themed, I think, pretty wisely themed to the idea that you are on the roof and that you're really high up. And one of them is, I think we've talked about this on the show, is just like a roller coaster track, and it just looks like you're going to go over and it stops. And even though you know you're not going to go over, you've been online, you watched other people do it, your brain, man, something in your brain, like your brain doesn't know it.
It's the exact same type of thing where you look at it and you think, if anything fails, this is just going to go over the I mean, and still, even the Stratosphere, I've done those rides a couple of times, and they scare the crap out of me. I'm still to this day, like, I have this vision that I'm going to one day wake up and turn on my computer, and there's going to be like this headline of catastrophic failure accident on Stratosphere, and ride vehicle plunges 1,000 feet to the ground, and there's just going to be these like just fantastic pictures of parts of a ride everywhere. But that's the whole thing, because in your mind, that's what you imagine is going to happen. That's why these rides, are so freaking scary to most people, because that's exactly what you picture, and that's kind of the whole point of the whole thing. If we knew that it was going to be safe, why would that be so much fun, All
right, let's say I'm a roller coaster enthusiast. I've been across all 50 states. I've done Cedar Point, Magic Mountain, Great America, the whole thing. I'm ready to go international. Where do you recommend I go?
So, okay, the answer to that question is going to be kind of a lot of what you're looking for. Now, Europe has some absolutely fantastic rides. Germany has, one of the best roller coasters that I've ever been on, this ride called Expedition G-Force. And if you look at it, it just kind of looks like your standard, non-looping hypercoaster, like something like, Goliath at Magic Mountain, Nitro at Great Adventure. But this is a full-on, balls out, the minute it leaves that lift hill, just airtime flying all over the place. Again, it's not the tallest or fastest in the world, but it is absolutely one of the best rides we've ever done. It's out of control feeling the entire way, and that's at a park called Holiday Park in Germany. And then kind of shifting gears a little bit, there's a park called Europa Park that's also in Germany, which is just it's kind of mainland Europe's answer to the Disney parks. And this park has been around since even before Disneyland Paris was built. But again, it's just a beautifully themed park. All different theme sections in different lands, very similar to what you'd have at Disney. And I think they're up to 6 very nice resort hotels. And it's one of the places that Europeans go to not only kind of get away and do theme parks, but also for roller coasters. I mean, they've got a great wooden roller coaster called Woden. They've got Silver Star, which is a gigantic steel hypercoaster. They've got some really screwed up, awesome rides. This one called Euromir, which kind of starts out, it's sort of like a spinning, turning attraction built around these mirrored towers with this sort of wild mouse track on the top. And it starts with this kind of like circular lift motor thing that kind of plays techno music throughout the whole thing. It's a very weird experience. Again, Google Euromir. I think we have a video of it on our YouTube channel, but again, just really bizarre, strange rides that probably wouldn't go over so well in America. Not that I'm not sure why they wouldn't. I just kind of get the feeling that like this thing wouldn't, because I think Americans are always looking for the next top thrill dragster or king to call, like what's the biggest, what's the best. And sometimes the biggest and best resonates well with us, whereas weirdest kind of doesn't. Do you know what I mean?
So over there, they have like more of an appreciation for the art of the coaster.
I think so. I think that's the right way to look at it. And then shifting gears again, going to someplace like Japan. Japan may not have the best roller coasters on the planet, but it has some of the coolest theme parks.
What are those parks? Which ones?
I mean, okay. There's a park called Mitsui Greenland, for example, that's in the southern part of Japan, and you go there, and they have your standard roller coasters, hyper coasters, looping coasters.
What's a hyper coaster? You used that word before, and I was afraid. I thought you were just trying to say it was awesome, like it's a hyper coaster.
Yeah, but man, it's so hyper.
But now I'm thinking that it is a specific. It refers to something specific.
So in the roller coaster nerd terminology, there's different words you use to describe different types of rides. Hypercoaster is a term that was kind of invented for big steel roller coasters like Nitro or Goliath that go over 200 feet but don't have any inversions or loops in them whatsoever.
Okay.
And they're built mainly for speed, for airtime. Most of them usually only have a lap bar because they don't go upside down, or there's not a lot of kind of motion throwing your body from side to side.
And airtime, I definitely remember this from our first chat, which is so many years ago now, but I'll never forget that airtime is when your butt gets out of the seat. Like, when you go over a hill and you are flying above the coaster for just a second. That's airtime, right?
Yeah, and because it's that feeling that you're going to get ejected out of the ride. And usually everyone knows when they get airtime, because you get that moment where you're either coming down a drop or going over the hill. And there's that oh shit moment where you grab onto the bar because it feels like you're going to fly out of the ride. That's when you know that you're getting really good airtime.
But now, roller coasters globally, including in the United States, are made by a small handful of companies which are international, right? So are the same companies supplying roller coasters to all these parks?
This is absolutely true. Each territory has some, specific manufacturers, to that area. For example, in America here, we have companies like Rocky Mountain Construction, Premier Rides, S&S, and they supply rides not only for America but for everywhere. Japan has Senyo and Micho, and Europe has Intamin, B&M, Vekoma, Mauersohn, Gerstlauer. These are all just, I know that these names mean nothing to you, but they're all very specific manufacturers, very much like car manufacturers. And there's people online that will sort of have their favorites, and you can definitely tell, like a Toyota has a certain level of quality to it, a certain quirkiness, same thing with a Volkswagen. And that's exactly the same thing with roller coaster manufacturers. You could tell a ride, from Vekoma, for example, they're a little rougher around the edges sometimes. If you've ever seen a ride called the Boomerang, I know Knott's Berry Farm has one, and they're kind of scattered. Clones of these rides are kind of all over the world. That comes from a company called Vekoma. They're very good at making rides that they sort of duplicate from park to park, lower cost, but somewhat efficient. Where you have another company like B&M or Intamin, they're making very customized rides specifically for a certain park. Intamin is the guys that they're always breaking world records. I mean, they're the ones that did the Formula Rossa ride out at Abu Dhabi that goes 149 miles an hour.
Whoa!
Yeah, no, it's insane. They did King to Con Top Thrill Dragster, and they broke that 400-foot tall barrier. B&M, they do a lot of. They're kind of like the Mercedes-Benz of roller coasters. They're sleek, they're shiny, and they're expensive. They do the Batman the rides. They do Nitro. They do they do the three coasters down here at SeaWorld and the ones over at Islands of Adventure. So if you want like a high capacity, sort of everybody loves to go on, you go with B&M. So each company has very specific things that they're good at. Rocky Mountain Construction, one of the U.S. companies, they're the ones that are kind of taking the industry by storm right now. They just built, because you're located in California, right, Jeff?
I'm actually back in New York now.
Oh, okay. All right. So you've been bi-coastal now for a while. So like Rocky Mountain is the company that's been taking some of these older wooden roller coasters and retrofitting them with steel tracks and doing just crazy things that wooden roller coasters couldn't do before.
But wait, I'm in California sometimes. Where can I go do that?
Okay, so there's a couple of them. If you're in California, they open Twisted Colossus at Magic Mountain, and it's a badass ride.
Oh man.
In the Northeast, they opened Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. That ride, oh my God, it blew me away. I mean, we did that earlier last year, and it was just incredible. You want to talk about airtime, where even me as a seasoned rider who will grab that oh shit handle as you come through drops. It's awesome. And they've now actually done rides. There's one at Six Flags Mexico they opened up. They're opening their first European one. Sweden, a park called Kolmarden is getting Wildfire next year. This year. But yeah, there's, like I said, these companies, they make rides for everywhere in the world, but they definitely come from a very small group of engineers and manufacturers.
When you go to a theme park and you're in Japan, is it hard to get around the theme park? Or I guess theme parks accommodate tourists. Like when you're at Disney World, there's a lot of Japanese.
Yeah, it depends on where you go. So Japan's a great example. If you're at Tokyo Disney or Universal Osaka, for example, in Japan, I'd say almost everything that you're going to see will have a lot of English, and you can get by just fine. Most of the staff members will speak a little bit of English. I think in Japan, every person takes about 8 years of English when they go through school. So they actually know English better than they think that they do. And if you learn to say things in Japanese to them, like we've learned to say things like, "Oh, excuse me, do you speak English?" And you try to communicate a little bit in Japanese, they will you sort of break that mold, and you'll speak some really broken Japanese to them. They'll speak some broken English to you, and there's kind of like a nice sort of exchange between the two. And then all of a sudden, if you get them to speak a little bit more English, they realize that they actually speak a lot better English than I speak Japanese. And then, of course, if you compliment them on their English, like, "Oh, you speak English very, very well," they get very happy, and then they're excited to speak more English to you. So it kind of goes both ways. Like, we always recommend, no matter what country you're visiting for parks, you don't need to learn the Rosetta Stone and try to learn everything, but learn like a few common phrases, like "Hello, how are you doing? Good morning." Learn to at least count 1 through 5. Learn to at least order a soda or a burger, and then when you kind of do that, and people will see that you're at least making an effort and you're not being kind of like an ugly American just assuming the entire world speaks English, they'll open up much more to you. Japan is one of those countries where everybody is so friendly and accommodating. Even if you don't speak Japanese, they will try to help you out, no matter where you're at.
Have you been on that ride that you mentioned in Abu Dhabi?
I have, yeah. It's amazing.
What is the theme park in Abu Dhabi like? Because Abu Dhabi, I've never been to, but it sounds like Abu Dhabi is itself a theme park.
It is. The whole UAE, Dubai.
Oh wait, yeah, I guess I'm thinking of Dubai. I'm sorry.
That whole area, well, and they're all very close together. I mean, so the park, Ferrari World, is only about maybe 45 minutes to an hour outside of Dubai, depending on how fast your taxi drivers go, which they drive extremely fast there, which is, I guess, why it's called Ferrari World. They love fast cars. But the ride is just phenomenal. I mean, it goes 0 to 149 miles an hour in what feels like an instant. And it's one of those rides. I mean, when that launch kicks, you feel it really strong, and then it just keeps going and going and going and going. And it is the downside about that ride is once you hit 149 miles an hour, you sort of climb this hill, and it's got a lot of trim brakes on the top of the hill because it has to slow you down really fast, because otherwise you probably would die. But the one thing it's funny about it, because you watch the videos and you think, oh, it's what a disappointment, it slows you down. No, you're probably still doing 90 miles an hour when you go over the top of that first hill, which is still faster than 90% of the roller coasters out there on the planet. And it's It's just a crazy ride. I mean, I love it. I mean, it's one of those rides where you can feel and you can see the cheeks of your face distort and just it's hard. You have to wear goggles. That's the one thing about them is because it's all outdoors and it's in the sandy area of the desert out there in the Middle East. You have to wear protective goggles in order to ride that roller coaster.
How was getting around that park? Was it difficult at all to get around that one?
No, it's fantastic. I mean, the one nice thing about that area of the Middle East is almost everybody speaks English. I mean, you're talking about we're in Dubai, right? And along with things like the Burj Khalifa with the world's tallest building, their gigantic indoor ski park and everything. You also walk by they have Taco Bell and Applebee's and TGI Fridays there. It is so Western in that part of the Middle East. It shocked me because, as Americans, especially after 9/11, we've been taught over and over again throughout the years, it's like, oh, the Middle East hates us, blah, blah, blah. And then you go to a place like Dubai, which is so Western friendly. I mean, and you see billboards, it's like, hey, you buy this over at the Gap, this is what Americans wear, don't you want to be cool like them? And it's very interesting to see. No, I mean, we had Johnny Rockets and Taco Bell in Dubai of all things, it's really strange.
Do you go to Dubai? Do you go to the theme park? Do you do anything else when you're in Dubai, or is it like the theme park is all we have time for when you're traveling to these countries?
No, I mean, the part of the thing we like to do about traveling is, theme parks are a reason to travel. Everybody kind of is into different things. It's people that follow like a band around and they go to different cities, and people that follow their favorite baseball or football team. Part of the reason is that we do travel is just because we like to go to different areas, so at least Abu Dhabi, or Dubai, so we go there because we want to go check out their theme parks. But no, I mean, we did one of those crazy safaris where you get in the Land Rovers and they take you through the dunes and everything, and you go bouncing around, and then you kind of go out to, one of the traditional sort of some Middle East areas where, you have the belly dancers and everything. And we do, I'd say, a good amount of cultural stuff. And then honestly, the other thing we like to do when we go to different areas is we like to go and do things that locals do. You can go to the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and all these touristy things, and that's where all the other tourists go. But sometimes it's kind of fun to visit, local areas and go to some of the local shopping malls. And a lot of the parks we do, part of the reason why we enjoy it is, a lot of theme parks all over the world are not so much built for tourism, but they're built for the local market. So when you go to some of the parks like in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the smaller ones, you kind of get a feel for what the people around you are like, and you try to, obviously it's kind of harder to fit in there, but you at least do as much as you can to be respectful. When my wife goes, she'll make sure that everything is covered up like you're supposed to be, and sometimes she'll wear the scarf over her face, and I'll make sure I'm not wearing short shorts or whatever, and you kind of learn a little bit of the culture that's around you. It's just fascinating to us. I mean, we like doing. I couldn't imagine doing a trip that's just theme parks, and we know a lot of people that do, and I feel like you're kind of missing out. The whole point of traveling isn't so much just to go to the park, but it's kind of like to have an anchor and a reason to do it, and then spend a few days doing other things.
I imagine that there's pieces of theme park culture that are distinctly American, and I don't even recognize them because I've only been to theme parks in this country. Is there anything just culturally, just about the way people act, not even the rides, just the way the park is organized and behaved that is different when you go overseas?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point. So we're used to in America here, when you go to parks like Disney or Universal, let's say, and you sort of get that sense of a lot of money was put into this, and there's a lot of theming, things are decorated, with a lot of attention to detail. And then you go to a Six Flags or Cedar Point, and not that there's anything really against this, but the attention to detail is not so much there, and they kind of just say, "Hey, come ride our big new roller coaster," and at Six Flags, literally some of them are plop down into a parking lot where they haven't even painted over the parking lot stripes that used to be there.
That's true.
And you know what I mean? And again, the rides are a lot of fun, but I think Europe especially is one of those places where every park takes a lot of care when it comes to detail. I can't think of many parks in Europe where you can say, okay, this is the Six Flags or Cedar Fair of Europe, because even some of the roller coaster parks, they all have very lush gardens. They have things where here's a great example. So Phantasialand, which is a park in Germany, is installing a gigantic new looping coaster this year, and right next to that ride, they realize this is a ride that's going to be for older people, 10 and 12 years old and up. This is going to appeal to the thrill seeker. But they said, hey, we have this whole new area dedicated to this thrill ride. Let's also put a smaller ride. So they're putting in like a junior roller coaster right next to it that's kind of intertwined with the bigger roller coaster. So let's say if you have a family, if you go with a family of 4, and let's say, like mom or dad doesn't necessarily want to ride, but, one of the older kids do, like dad can ride the big roller coaster with one of the kids. And let's say you have another kid that's too young, and mom and the other kid could go on the smaller ride. And we see that a lot in Europe, where they really pay attention to say, hey, we want families to come to this park and experience sort of things together. So if they can't necessarily go on the big ride, we want to offer something that's right next door for everybody to do. So we're not kind of like pigeonholing, the kids into what's called like the quote unquote like the kids area of the park. The kids area is kind of spread all over the place. And on top of that, everything is themed very well. I mean, there's a lot of parks out there in Europe that you go to and say, man, like I'm seeing stuff that's giving Disney its running for the money. And this would be, like almost like a Six Flags type of park in Europe.
What's something like that? Because for me, it's hard to imagine something like that. It's hard to imagine Disney without the Disneyness in it. I guess in Disney, there is just a generic Wild West and a generic jungle, but it's hard for me to imagine Disney without the characters, or Universal without the movie, the licenses. So what are they doing in regards to theming that is putting it on par with Disney?
I think a lot of it is just the landscaping. Okay, I'll talk about Phantasialand again. If you've been down to Disney, either in Florida or California, there's this ride called Toy Story Mania, where you get in this little ride vehicle, and it's a shooting ride based on all the Toy Story characters, and it's kind of like shooting gallery type of things, and it's super fun. I love it. It's one of our favorite rides at Disney. So Phantasialand obviously looked at that and said, "Hey, we really like this concept, but we don't have a character or anything." So they came up with a completely brand new character, and it's this Mouso Chocolat is the name of the ride, where you go into this bakery and you're shooting things inside this bakery, with this mice character, and everything is extremely. It kind of reminds me of a Ratatouille type of scenario, right? I guess you can almost call it like a Ratatouille ripoff, but everything is really well done to the point where you said, like, okay, if this ride was at a Disney park, this would be 100% acceptable, and the attention to detail and the quality of the animation that I'm looking at on screen is all there. I mean, it's like they really like getting Imagineers that are Disney caliber to work on a lot of these attractions. Whereas a lot of the smaller parks here in America, I don't know if it's that they don't have the budget to do something like that, or it's just kind of not part of the culture, but regional parks seem to sort of not do as much as far as like theming and attention to detail, where European and Japanese parks absolutely do.
What about, you just mentioned Japanese parks, but Asia? What's the general tenor of the parks in Asia? Is there a way to describe them all at once? Is there something they're all doing that's unique?
They're all very weird and different. I'm trying to think.
What are some of the weird and different things you've seen in theme parks in Asia?
Let's see. There's a park in Japan we've gone to where you can bet on duck races, which I think that's up there as far as weird things that you can do.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, again, take care of the ducks, but as long as the ducks are healthy, I would love to cheer for a duck race.
No, it's great. There's parks that we've seen that have like little archery fields. Oh, you can go fishing. So one of the cool things at parks in Japan is you literally go down and then they have a stream and you go and you purchase a fishing rod, and you fish your own fish and you come out and you cook it like right there. It's just things like that I would never think that could happen in America, because I'm sure they'd be worried about what if somebody gets sick or whatever. But no, this is Japan. People are responsible. They take personal responsibility. So if they catch a fish and cook it and eat it and get sick or whatever, but I also think that they probably know what they're doing. I mean, it's Japan, home of sushi. I'm sure if anyone's going to know how to catch and cook a fish, it's going to be these guys, right? But I just, like some of the rides, I think sometimes the fact that we don't know what is going on is what makes it super cool. I mean, if you're an anime fan at all, almost every park has something based on anime, and just some really wild, funky attractions, from like a Spider-Man motion-based kind of thing to, roller coasters that kind of stop halfway and show you a little bit of a movie. There's one at one of the hotels, and the thing is about Japan is and China as well. There are amusement parks everywhere. It's almost like the amusement and having fun is built within their culture, that every kind of town or city needs to have a little, whether it's a little to a major amusement park, just to kind of blow off steam. So you'll have parks, this one called, Aqua Stadium is built inside of a hotel right in the heart of Tokyo, all the way out to, parks that are at the base of Mount Fuji, with some of the biggest roller coasters in Japan. Parks come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes in Asia.
You mentioned before sketchy looking rides. What's the sketchiest theme park you have seen in your travels?
So we've seen some really messed up stuff in China that, I'm one of these people that I understand that, the odds are always in my favor. I mean, I'm a realist. I know that, whenever people hear about accidents on roller coasters or whatever, I'm the first one to say, look, it happens, right? It's inevitable. We're talking these big, gigantic, mechanical machines. At some point that we may have a malfunction. But I also realize that you have a much better chance of getting into an accident, getting in your car, walking across the street, et cetera, than you ever will at an amusement park. So I know in my mind, I realize that the parks take safety very, very seriously. But man, there's been a couple times in China. There was one coaster we did, and it's called a shuttle coaster, which is one of those where it's one single track, and the ride kind of goes out, does a loop, kind of goes up a spike, comes backwards, and comes back in the station, right? Shuttles backwards and forwards. I don't know whether it was the maintenance of this ride or whether it was just, neglect, but there was something about the train. You walked up to it, and it felt like the train had not really been looked after in years. And when you went through the loop, you could sort of feel the entire train stall, and it would drop onto what's called its upstop wheel. So every roller coaster has a wheel assembly, and the upstop wheel is usually the wheel that's at the very bottom of the wheel assembly, and it sort of helps keep the train locked into position. So that way, if it ever came up off the track, the upstop wheel literally stopped it from going up off the track. You never usually want a ride to kind of ride on those upstop wheels. They're kind of there for, sort of like safety and emergency purposes. But you would feel every time you went on this ride, the train would come to the top of the loop, not have enough energy to make it, and then it would sort of just fall with a thud onto its upstop wheels, and then kind of what sounded like it scraped the rest of the way around. And that was one of the rides where both my wife and I, we decided that we would ride that one separately, just so that we wouldn't, orphan our daughter in case.
Oh my God! So you had that practical concern, but you didn't decide you're not going to ride it.
No, we did. You're exactly right. We said we're going to ride this goddamn thing, but we're not going to ride it together just in case, because we knew because we watched it go back and forth, and it works and it's fine, whatever. I will say this: that ride has since been closed. So we were looking at doing another China trip a couple years ago, and we looked up that park and the coaster, and we're like, oh, that shuttle coaster's gone. I wonder, if it just finally broke itself apart or what happened to it, but it no longer exists at that park, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Have you ever seen a ride that you actually did not get on? You were like, this is too much.
No, I mean, to be honest, again, I am a realist, and that I understand that, like, look, the odds are in your favor, and you would always be safe. I mean, honestly, like things like the tilt coaster, there's things that make me a little nervous, but I understand, like, my brain processes the fact that I know that I'm going to come off this safe. The whole idea of actually getting into an accident, it's like getting in my car. Like, if I'm not going to go on a roller coaster, I might as well never ever get in my car as long as I live. Because, like, I go out here on I-4 or whatever, and oh my God, I see some crazy shit out there every single day, and I think, man, I-4 is way, way, like, crazier and more unsafe than any roller coaster I've ever been on. So I have to keep that take that into consideration, even going on something that, like swings over the side of the Stratosphere Tower 1,000 feet up in the air. I know that I have a much better chance of survival off that thing than just going on the 405 in Los Angeles,
What else did you see in China?
Again, China's just one of those really interesting places where they have a lot of legit roller coasters by real manufacturers, and that's something that's only really been happening like the last maybe half a dozen years or so. But prior to that, you would see a lot of what we call Chinese knockoff roller coasters, where the Chinese would look at a roller coaster design, something that you're very familiar with that you see at parks, and then it's almost like they would make a Chinese version of it just based off of pictures. And I know it sounds like I'm making this up, but I'm not. A lot of the suspended looping coasters, you must have been on like Batman the Ride or something, one of those coasters where, the track is above your head and you sort of sit in the car and your feet dangle below you, right?
Oh, yeah. I grew up like 45 minutes from Great Adventure, so I've been on Batman the Ride.
You know what I mean? So imagine a Chinese knockoff version of Batman, which sort of looks like it and kind of does the similar things that Batman does, but you get in the ride and it feels very chunky and clunky, and the train kind of like jostles back and forth, and you're like, yeah, this was built by kind of reverse engineering something that they saw in a picture somewhere, and not necessarily like using what I would consider like really good math. It's just something just doesn't seem to add up. And there's a lot of those coasters all over China. And the thing about it too is we've seen some really beautifully laid out roller coasters that just ride like complete crap. And it's a little disappointing, because you'll go to they have a chain of parks in China called the Happy Valley Parks. And they're very similar to, like, let's say we call them the Six Flags of China. But again, some of them are beautifully themed parks.
What are the themes? What are they themed to?
A lot of it is just very like lush mountains and sort of space age stuff. Actually, my favorite ride of all of China that they do, which oddly enough was developed in Jacksonville, Florida, we call it the Santa Claus Shooting Dark Ride. Now, it's a shooting ride, like, you've been on lots of like ones where you get a gun and you're shooting at the stuff. Now, technically in this ride, you're not actually shooting Santa Claus or the kids or the helpers. You're sort of protecting them, and there's different targets and everything. But you basically are given this gun and you go on this ride that's all themed to Santa Claus and Christmas. And all you can think of is like, I have a gun and I'm shooting at dogs and children and reindeer and Santa Claus. It's on our YouTube channel. If you do a Google search, I'm sure for like Santa Claus Shooting Dark Ride or Christmas Shooting Dark Ride, it'll come right up. And we laugh about it all the time because it's actually a really good ride. Like, the animation looks great, the sets look great, but the whole idea that you're at this like really elaborately themed ride where you're shooting kids and Santa themed, Christmas themed, object, it just makes us laugh every time we ride it.
Do they have other licenses out there for, I guess you mentioned they have anime, but is there an equivalent of Disney World where the Disney is some brand that we don't recognize here in America?
So, like I said, not anything that would be super popular or recognizable. Like I said, the Happy Valley Parks, they kind of have they've created their own characters. Japan has, for example, Japan has Hello Kitty parks. There's at least 2 or 3 of them. Mostly geared towards the kids. I kind of call them like almost like a Legoland type of feel, where it's mostly younger kids, but they're really elaborate, nice parks. The Hello Hello Kitty Park in Japan has one of the most elaborately themed like boat rides. It would be kind of like, imagine like It's a Small World, but for Hello Kitty fans. And it goes through, has all the Sanrio characters. So, you know, if you're a fan of like Hello Kitty or Bats Maru or Pom Pom Purrin or any of these characters that have lived within like the Sanrio, you know, universe for years, they're all there. You know, a My Melody fan would go on this ride and freak out because it's got like, you know, characters that they would recognize. So yeah, you know, I don't want to, I can't really think of too many characters that are specific to those countries that we wouldn't know of here. I mean, there's Doraemon in Japan, but there's no really like big Doraemon themed parks. You might see a couple like figures here and there, but honestly, you know, Disney is expanding everywhere. I mean, Hong Kong has a Disney, Japan has a Disney, Europe has their Disney, and then Shanghai, China is opening up Disney. It opens in June of this year, and I don't know if you've seen pictures of that park, but again, every time Disney builds a new Disneyland, they just keep getting better and better and more elaborate, and this looks like it's going to be, you know, one of the most elaborate Disneylands ever built.
So yeah, I was actually going to ask that. I love me some Disneyland. How are the international Disneylands? Because Euro Disney was kind of a joke for a while. Like, I'm thinking of that Simpsons that ends with, there's no one at Euro Itchy and Scratchy Land. But you're telling me it's good?
So here's the thing. Okay, Euro Disneyland or Disneyland Paris, the park is beautiful. I do admit that sometimes the clientele and the sort of, you know, French attitude around the park is not going to be too welcoming to most Americans. The park itself is beautiful. I mean, if you want to go on probably one of the best versions of Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion, it's at Disneyland Paris. Tokyo Disney, on the other hand, oh my God, Tokyo Disney still remains to me one of the, if not the best park in the world.
Wait,
so
I want to get, before we get to Tokyo Disney, and I want to hear what makes it the best park in the world, or even the best Disney park in the world, what makes the Pirates of the Caribbean at Euro Disney like better than the one in California?
So again, Disney does a really good job of almost every time they say, hey, we built an attraction, let's do version 2.0, 3.0, etc. You know, they just improve upon it a little bit. So Pirates in Paris just has this even more immersive feel. You know, it feels multi-level in some places where the boat kind of, you know, is almost like, it feels like it's kind of like at the top of this building. There's a section where two animatronic pirates are having a sword fight, you know, which is, you know, when you think about it from just a technical aspect, getting two characters to interact with each other, you know, it's impressive. And honestly, probably the best part about the Paris version of Pirates, they have not politically correctly ruined it. The pirates still chase the women as pirates were meant to be.
I guess Pirates is a pretty old ride. I mean, it's from like the 50s, right? Or the 60s?
It was mid-60s at Disneyland. So
it makes sense that, like, you know, literally 50 years later, like, they're a little bit better at just building rides.
Yeah.
All right. So Tokyo Disney, what makes tell me more about it. What makes Tokyo Disney the best Disney? Please paint this picture for me.
So there's two Disney parks at the Tokyo Disney Resort. There's Tokyo Disneyland, which is very similar if you're familiar with Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. And then there's Tokyo Disney Sea. And I don't know whether they gave the Imagineers, they said, we do not have a budget on this park. Just build the most incredible, beautiful park you've ever seen. So the entire park, the centerpiece, you know how most park has kind of like a centerpiece, you know, the castle at Magic Kingdom, the Spaceship Earth at Epcot, you know, the Chinese Theater at Hollywood Studios, et cetera, et cetera. The key icon for this park is this just gigantic man-made volcano, Mount Prometheus, in the center of the park, with an attraction called Journey to the Center of the Earth inside of it, which is just this most elaborate thrill ride / dark ride you've ever seen. If you've been on either Test Track here at Epcot or Radiator Springs Racers at Disney California Adventure, it uses that same sort of system where the ride vehicles are able to speed up very quickly, not super fast like a fast roller coaster, but fast enough to give you a thrill. And it just sort of goes through this whole section of, you know, going into the center of the Earth, and you know the whole theme is, you know, you're an explorer and you're digging down, and you end up finding this horrible lava monster, you know, which you know, the fire around you has created these evil creatures. I mean, the animation and theming of it is just phenomenal. Again, We have videos of all this stuff, if you search for Journey to the Center of the Earth. And then, their Tower of Terror, they don't really have Twilight Zone in Japan. So they've created this entirely new theming behind it, which if you just look at a picture of Tokyo Disney Sea's Tower of Terror, the look of it is just incredible. It's kind of like this, turn of the century New York wrought iron fence, just absolutely stunning looking building. And then they've created this fictional story of this eccentric, traveler, almost kind of like a Indiana Jones, this kind of like guy, and he's kind of like an artifact collector going all over the world, and he's found this evil artifact called Shiriki, and everybody's told him, it's like, no, don't bring this back to, this will haunt, you forever. And so this Shiriki character takes over the building, and it's just everything about all their attractions is the story is so incredibly immersive, and the effects, and they do this effect of this Shiriki character disappearing right in front of you that a lot of people are still like, I have no idea how they're doing this. It's just really impressive. Just between the theatrics, the technology, they have their Winnie the Pooh ride. You think about like something very simple like Winnie the Pooh. It's built out of this trackless dark ride system where there's no track anywhere that you look. But these pods, you go in with 3 pods at a time. The pods are circling around each other, and you go into this big open room, and each one goes to a different scene, and then they sort of interact each other. You get to the Hempflips and Woozles part, and the pods are kind of like all of a sudden you're in this room and there's like 12 different pods around you, and they're all dancing around and doing different things, and the Tigger room actually bounces, and it's crazy. Every attraction you go into this park, it's like it ruins Disney parks all over the world for you, because you're like, okay, I could never go on the Winnie the Pooh ride again at any other park because I've now been at the one in Tokyo, and it blows everything out of the water.
What is there another Disney? What's the other one? Oh, in China you were saying, right?
Yeah, so Shanghai Disney. Okay, so Hong Kong Disney opened a few years ago. I want to say it was maybe, it actually might be about 10 years ago now. Now, the interesting thing about Hong Kong Disney, it was sort of built at a time where Disney was building parks kind of on the cheap. So Hong Kong Disney opened, and it really was did not have a lot of attractions. We went through opening year, and we had done every single ride in the park in like maybe 4 hours. And then over the years, they've really developed that park more. They've done a version of Haunted Mansion, which they called Mystic Manor, which again is just incredibly elaborate haunted house type ride, a trackless dark ride system, all new characters that you've never seen before, a very elaborate storyline. They put together a roller coaster called Big Grizzly Mountain, which is kind of like a cross between Expedition Everest and Big Thunder Mountain. Again, all new animatronics in there. The roller coaster has a launch section, a backward section. There's this one part of the ride where it feels like you're going up like a standard roller coaster lift hill, and then all of a sudden you see the cable snap next to you, and then all of a sudden the roller coaster goes flying down the hill backwards, and it's just really cool stuff. And you're thinking like, oh my god, please build any of these attractions in either California or Florida. We want them.
Isn't there a Ratatouille ride in Euro Disney? I'm jumping around a little now. What's the Ratatouille ride like?
So again, the Ratatouille ride, it's another. You'll hear me say the word this trackless dark ride system, because even though it's been around for about 10 years, it's a very expensive system. Imagine like you and a buddy are playing with some radio controlled cars, right? And you have 3 or 4 of them, and you're sitting there saying like, okay, let's make our radio control cars kind of like in unison, kind of like, go through like a slalom course and just can do some really cool thing. And it sort of looks like you're going to crash your cars together, but they kind of do near misses and everything. That's kind of what the big feature of the trackless dark ride system is, where you can get a room of like, let's say 4 or 5 different of ride vehicles, and they can all be kind of like coming next to each other and doing these maneuvers where it sort of feels like you're going to hit, or it gives a ride a lot more activity, where instead of kind of like getting in a ride vehicle and going on a track and you're sort of this like a very passive experience, it becomes interactive, not only with the other riders and other ride vehicles that are in the attraction, but also with what's going on around you. So Ratatouille also uses this system where, again, it just kind of like goes through scenes from the film, and some of it is media based, some of it is actual physical sets. And again, there's a lot of very expensive stuff being spent on rides. Now, we have been hearing a rumor, and I want to stress that this is a rumor, that we may finally be getting a trackless dark ride system in a Disney park with the new Star Wars expansions. But again, those are strictly rumors and things I've only heard, and it might be more of like a wish list thing you turn into a rumor, but I hope it's true.
Before we recorded, I took a look at my analytics, because I know there's some international Jeff Rubin listeners. I wanted to make sure that they were accommodated on this globe-trotting episode.
Sure.
And one place people listen to this podcast that we have not discussed is Australia. Have you ever been to any theme parks in Australia?
Yeah, so Australia has some really interesting parks too. Now, there's not that many on Australia. There's a few in the Gold Coast. We've been to ones in Melbourne, and there's a couple of smaller sort of what we call a traditional kind of Coney Island Luna Park type of parks in Sydney. Sydney used to have a much bigger park at one point called Wonderland, and it closed probably about 10 or 15 years ago. I'm not sure why Sydney couldn't sustain like a full-size theme park, but it has, again, so Luna Park in Sydney, while the roller coasters are kind of small, it has like a very traditional wooden wild mouse, but in a way the key feature of that park is their fun house. They have one of these very traditional style, all built out of wood, fun houses from like the turn of the century that Coney Island used to have, that I think would be no longer allowed in America, just due to like the lawyers would walk in and be like, no, we're shutting this place down right here, where these just gigantic slides and spinning attractions where you see people like literally like go down a slide, and at the end of it there's just a pile of human bodies at the end, because you kind of fly all over the place, or like some of these spinning things where you get into you sit on this like platform on the ground, and the idea is to try to stay as long as you can on this spinning platform before you get like thrown into a wall, and like this is one of those things where it's like I'm sure that there must be some sort of injuries, and Americans would just complain and sue. But in Australia, like, this is still acceptable, and this is still a lot of fun, and these are kind of like those hidden gems that you find in international parks that have been gone for decades here in America.
Is there a dream destination of yours that you haven't gotten to yet?
One of the places, to be honest, is actually Russia. Now, while they don't have a lot of theme parks there, Russia has, again, some very interesting looking parks. And again, like I'd love to go to places and visit the Kremlin and everything. And it's definitely on the list. And I want to say it's probably pretty high on the list. And also probably South Africa. So, there's a couple of actually really decent parks in South Africa. And also we've never done the thing, we were sort of waiting for our daughter to get a little older. I think, you have to be either 8 or 10 to really do some of the safaris and everything. And so those are a couple places that, we've wanted to go, and we'll get to eventually. I mean, there's nothing really stopping us, like, either than, some time or just logistics of getting there. And like I said, it's, we do travel with a child, so we do have to take that into consideration as well.
You've been to all these places with a child?
We have, actually.
Oh my God!
It's funny too, and she loves traveling. I mean, she's going to be 9 in a couple of months, and it's funny too because again, it's one of those things that when you travel like we do, it's you don't want to come off as bragging about it, but we always tell this story where and this is a couple years ago. I think Kristen was in first grade, and the teacher came to us and said, "Oh, you really need to talk to your daughter," because we were talking about places in the world, and she would like open up a book and have a picture of the Great Wall of China, like, "Oh, I've been there." "Oh, the Eiffel Tower." "Oh, I've been there." "Oh, the London Bridge, or the Tower Bridge in London." "Oh, I've been there." And she's like, "Oh yeah, you need to talk to your daughter because it's you got to let her know she shouldn't be lying like this." And I'm like, no, she actually has been to all these places, and and again, it's one of those things we just find it's so important. I know so many Americans that don't even have a passport, and it's not expensive to get, and traveling is nowhere near as expensive as people think it is. There's so many different options out there to travel a little bit cheaper and travel on a budget. And don't let your kids stop you, because we had one time there was, do we take our child to China for 2 weeks, and we would have to take her out of school, and just from the cultural perspective of things, I think she loved it, and she came back and had all these amazing stories to tell, and it was wonderful.
They don't teach them anything important until they're at least double digits anyway.
Exactly,
You're not learning a lot in first grade. Certainly nothing you can't learn, going to see the world. But the thing that I think stops me from going to a roller coaster in Abu Dhabi next week is just time. Like, please remind me, what are you doing? Like the 2 out of every 3.5 days or whatever it is that you're not at a theme park.
What's funny is Theme Park Review, the site for us, it is a full-time job, and I'm sure you probably get people ask you about it too, and saying like, oh, it sounds like you just have you have the dream job, and yes, I do admit that our job is a lot of fun, and we love doing it, we love traveling, but on the flip side, it's a lot of hard work putting everything together, and it's very it's very time consuming. I spend hours upon hours like going through video and sorting through all of our updates and writing a lot of our trip reports, and not only that, but just keeping up on social media. Social media is just it really is a full-time job now. I mean, you must know this. I mean,
no. If you work at a company, you hire a social media person.
No,
it's a full-time job.
And I do it all myself. Like everything you see on the website, we only have a couple of people that help out a little bit here and there. 95% of what you see on all of our social media, the website, the YouTube channel, that's all me putting that together, or my wife and I putting it together. It's everything is created here, and it's and we do everything from the social media side to doing all the filming that we do for parks. I mean, we do a lot of commercial and television filming as well as the stuff that we do for Theme Park Review. So it is. I feel like we have like 3 or 4 full-time jobs that is only divided between 2 people. It's a lot of work. I mean, we enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. It's fun work, but man, it fills up your day pretty quickly.
Well, how can people appreciate your work? Where can they find you online?
So I say our social media is where things have absolutely exploded lately. You could find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and we're usually at Theme Park Review. So if you do, if you just go to our website, which is themeparkreview.com, we have links to all of our social media channels right on the front page. The video section on YouTube, I mean, I want to say we have something like 1,700 videos now. And I mean, and we have people tell us all the time, like they'll come on our channel and hours later they're still watching it, because you can search like, roller coaster or, videos of Tokyo, Japan, or videos of theme parks in Germany. Literally just hours and hours and hours of content. Follow us on Twitter. We live tweet all the time. So on Twitter, we're at Theme Park Review. Same thing with Instagram. All right.
Theme Park Review. Check it out. Rob, thank you as always for being on the show. Always a pleasure.
I love doing this podcast, man. I don't do too many of them, and whenever I get a message from you, you're always one of the ones like, I am thumbs up on this. I love it.
I will take advantage of that. Thank you again.
All right, take care, man.
Thank you for listening to the Jeff Rubin Show. I will be back with a new episode in a few weeks, but in the meantime, I am going to upload a video to my YouTube channel, a new video. This is not just a podcast I recorded, with another Jeff Rubin 3-time guest. He's probably a Jeff Rubin 5-6-time guest. I'm talking about Scott Wiener from Scott's Pizza Tours. Scott has this pizza box he got from Hong Kong that turns into a movie projector. And I had him come over, and we made a little video where we basically took it apart and explored that. So that will be on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JeffRubin. Hell, I'll probably post it on my Facebook page, and you can follow me on Twitter, where I am at Jeff Rubin Show. And all these links are at jeffrubin.com, where you can get every episode of this show for free. You can get my email address and a million other ways to contact me. I would love to hear from you. If you have someone you'd love to hear on the show, I'd love to hear about that. And I think that is it. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.